Hi, everybody. We're in our week nine weekly preview. Wait, no, we're not. We're doing the chapter overview. Oh my God, I'm doing all these in a row. So we're looking at chapter 6. We're in week 9. There we go. Okay, what are behavioral styles? This chapter is talking about customer service and behaviors. Oh my gosh, it's the most fascinating topic. Gosh only knows what motivates people, right? And one of the most important things you can try to figure out is, how someone might react to something, but good luck with that, because I've been around long enough to know that, boy, some people are just the most easygoing until you hit that one thing, and then you never expected that, right? So it starts us off on page 204 in, what exactly are behavioral styles. You can read the definitions of that. You don't really need me to do that. But on page 205, the customer service success tip, and I hope you're always reading all of these things in the margin too. They talk about taking the time to obtain one or more of the commercial self-assessment surveys available on the internet, like DISC. There's DISC, then there's DISC, or the Myers-Briggs type indicator, in order to learn more about yourself and be better equipped to interact with others. Well, be very, very careful about these kinds of tests. These are for fun, right? These by no means are scientifically backed and can confirm anything. Okay, Myers-Briggs in particular. If you haven't read the book already, one of the most fascinating books I've read in a long time is called The Cult of Personality. It's an older book now. It's been out for a while, by Annie Murphy Paul, and she debunks how and why all of these different tests that we have, and actually gives us the historical perspective of how they got started, from like the inkblot test going forward to Myers-Briggs. If I remember right, Myers-Briggs had developed like from some housewife lady that kind of got bored, and her and her daughter put something together. There was absolutely nothing scientific about it. And the MMI, is it the MMPI or MMIP? I can't do acronyms very well because I'm a bit dyslexic. It's the Minnesota something inventory test. That test still asks if you have your horse tied to the hitching post and it acts up, should you beat it? Or would you beat it? I don't know about you, but it's been a long time since I had my horse hitched up to the hitching post, or even saw a hitching post. And I'm old, but yeah. So be mindful that these things are insightful. They're kind of fun. But you can't use them to make decisions on. And that's something else you've learned from this book, The Cult of Personality, and some other legal type books, because I don't have a life and I'm super boring, and my favorite topic is psychology and legal issues. I know, but anyway, we have a lot of legal precedents that says we can't do that. California was one of the first that ended up in the Supreme Court, telling us that you cannot use these tests to base important decisions. Like, you can use these to make employer decisions. Please don't do that. And if you have any questions about that, take my HR class, right? We can't make hiring decisions using them, and we can't use them for promotional decisions. We can use them in the workplace to have fun. They're really fun, interesting type of exercises to use in like team building exercises kind of thing, because a lot of them will make sense. But if you ask enough of the right questions, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and if somebody's selling you something, there's a reason for it. Okay, if they want to give this to you, like if you, for example, take our leadership development class, where if you're in supervisory management or the hospitality management class, you're going to take that class. You're probably going to take it with me. Then you'll see that all of the major universities that have done testing like that, it's all free and it's all out there because it was used for research. If somebody offers to sell you a test, I'd be a little bit leery about that. So be mindful of these kinds of things, because unless you are an expert that have spent half your life studying this kind of stuff, it's going to be pretty hard for any customer service representative to make them useful. Okay, now I'll get off my soapbox, right? So trying to look at the behavioral styles, where we are going to get into some of this, like the history. They talk about Carl Jung. If you go to page 206, again, they talk about Myers-Briggs, looking for primary behavior patterns. And like I said, they're fun to do. And you guys are going to do one of these, right? Because they are fun to do. And they do give you some insight into what your personality is like. But remember that this will change over time, because we as human beings, we change, we grow over time, right? So anything you took 20 years ago is going to look like it did today. It might not look like the same as you took it if you took it tomorrow, because on the way to work, you know, your alarm didn't go off and you're already late. You spilled your cup of coffee in your on your pants in the car, right? Then you got a flat tire and you hit every red light in town. By the time you got to take this test, you're in a whole different mindset, right? So, read through that, be mindful of what they're telling you. And they do give us a little caveat to this on page 206 about this. These are just quick, you know, they call it quick indicators. It says, because of the complexities of human behavior, you should not try to use behavioral characteristics and cues as absolute indicators of the type of person that you're dealing with. And again, we can go back to psychopaths, favorite subject of mine. They're most fascinating people on earth. Read The Sociopath Next Door. It's a fabulous book. If you're in business and you're studying business like we are, you should definitely read Snakes in Suits. I can't borrow my book to people because I have names of people in the margins as I read that book. Like, oh, wow, didn't know I was working with a psychopath. According to Dr. Hare, who is the father of psychopathy, and some studies are up in the percentages a little bit. We've got one out of Great Britain a few years ago. Dr. Hare, I think, represents 1 to 3% of all leaders that lead large corporations and run countries are psychopaths. And there's a lot of, and psychopaths aren't what you think they are. These aren't the crazy people in prison. Well, there might be, you know, there might be a few there. There's a continuum, right? But there are some valuable things to learn from Snakes in Suits, because it was written by Dr. Hare and a co-author, I can't remember his name, with the topic in mind of in business. So about the first, I think around, I'd have to read it again. It's been a couple of years since I've read it. I've read it like 3 times. The first 2/3 of the book really introduce us to the topic and what it looks like in the workplace. And then the last third of the book kind of tells you how to learn to work with these people, or if there's no hope and you just have to job hunt, right? Because you will work for a psychopath at some point. And with that in mind, they can change their personalities to fit whatever. They're very, you know, chameleons, right? They can sort of mold themselves. They often make really good salespeople, right? Another thing. So we're going to do one of these. So I'm going to stop lecturing on page 207 through through about 215 because 214, because you guys are doing that as one of your activities this week. So you'll see on our week 9 agenda, after number 2, which is our mini lecture, that number 3, your activity is describing your behavior, and you're going to look at, and I give you, directions to do that using this exercise. And then it goes on to activity number 4, then communicating with each different style. So like if you really did know that you were, and that this is really interesting. This isn't like Myers-Briggs. It's quite a bit different than that, but it does. I thought it was pretty close on. R is for rational, I is for inquisitive, D is for decisive, and and E is for expressive. And when I did the thing, I came out to be very decisive, and I am a very decisive person. So I give you some examples as you're working through this for the activities this week, because so basically that's what they're wrapped around. And then number 5, we move forward in the reading. You're going to do another one out of that face-to-face section. So you need to go through this on your own as you do the activity. So we're going to fast forward to page 215. So how do we build stronger relationships with our customers? And they break it down in 7 different ways that we can do that, right? And basically, I'm going to read their concept of this. Sometimes building stronger customer relationships means that you discover customer needs, seek opportunities for service, and respond appropriately to the customer's behavioral styles. Occasionally, you'll need to de-emphasize a no but try to say it as positively as possible. So the number one thing that you need to try to remember is that all of this should be based around problem solving. In the margin on page 215, problem solving, the system identifying issues, determining alternatives for dealing with them, then selecting and monitoring a strategy for resolution. If you go into any of this with a problem solving mindset, which is how I try to approach most things, especially with employees, customers, students, everything in my life. I didn't when I was younger, believe me. It took a long time to learn this. Then it's the win-win. And if any of you have read Covey's work, like the 7 Habits of Most Highly Effective People, we use it in our personal skills class, you'll learn that going for the win-win means really trying to problem solve. So if something's not right, you say, listen, can we sit down and talk about this? Because I feel like we're not on the same page or whatever it is that's going on. Let's figure out a way to make this work. With customers, it's the same thing. It's like, okay, wait a minute. I think I'm really not quite understanding what it is that you need. So let's break it down. Maybe on a piece of paper, we can make a list of things that you're looking for in this particular service or product. And then that might better help us identify, which path to go down or which product or, choices to look at. So problem solving, the win-win. So to do that, right, then they get into these 7 different ways that we can help do that. Discover the customer needs. Again, questioning, questioning, questioning. We just talked about that in the previous chapter, right? Asking lots of good questions, right? Learning to say, well, what would they say? Yes. Here, number 2 is say yes. Learning to say no without saying no. That's basically what they're trying to teach you how to do. Eventually, with time, you can do that. Oh, and there's another. I've got a book floating around here. Where is that? I think it's called Getting to Yes. Geez, it's a marketing. I'll have to find it. I think it's just a real nifty little book. It's called Getting to Yes, and I can't remember the author. It's just a real little one, and a friend of mine shared it with me because she comes from a marketing background, and she's all about customer service. So there's all kinds of things you can do to read outside this little tiny section of this book to teach you how to do that. The third thing, seeking opportunities for service. Problems can be opportunities. Remember the Lego example I gave you when the young people, they hacked Lego, stole their designs, blah, blah, blah. Then they got arrested, whatever. And then Lego, instead of saying, okay, we're going to prosecute you because now you're criminals, they said, wait a minute, let's have a focus group and find out, why did you do this? And they said, because you're too slow to market with your new products. Well, guess what? Now, let me see. Right now, it is September 2017, and Lego might be going away. It was just in Business Week. I think on Business Week or Business Report or Business News, whichever one I was reading or watching at the time. So maybe they're still not getting to market fast enough with their product. They give you a nice examples here on page 218, figure 6.3. I'm looking at it in our book. Strategies for responding to customer problems. So again, this is where, as part of that, you took that survey business. The rational, the inquisitive, the decisive, and the expressive. Now they are giving us strategies. How would we apply that? So, for example, decisive. I already said that I'm decisive, and I think I have this as an example in part of your activities as well. I'm very decisive. I don't need to. I don't want to fart around with things, right? So if something's not working for me, I'll just come in and be, here's what's not working, blah, 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 and this is what I need it to do. And you can look at the behaviors and the strategy. So decisive behavior seeks to avoid conflict, just wants the resolution. I'm not there to argue. I'm not there to fight with you about something. It's like, well, this just didn't work, and I know you didn't do it, right? It's not, you're the customer service rep. You didn't invent it, right? So I'm not there to do that. The strategy they suggest, maybe use the low-pitched, unemotional speech, be patient, listen, be patient, be empathetic. That's a big deal for me, because if you're not listening and I have to keep repeating myself, I'm going to very quickly get from here to there and say, no, you're not listening. I will tell you that, right? Because I'm very decisive and I don't want to spend time with that, waste time with all this other stuff. It talks about a firm business-like handshake. I'm all up with that. Let's do that. Let's just get the problem solved, right? I would get really put off if you were using some of these other strategies, because I am decisive. Now, some of these other things, depending on what they are, might work. And you have to use a plethora of these things, because none of us are all just one. I wasn't totally decisive. I mean, my numbers were kind of spread out. Decisive just happened to be the highest number. So you do have other strategies. So read through these a little bit. If anything, it gives you more ideas on how to deal with people that might have an issue with something, okay? Focusing on process improvement. If you ever end up in my team building and problem solving class, we talk about process control a lot. We talk about the 85-15 rule. The 85-15 rule says is most of the time it's management's fault, but we blame the employees. And in reality, they have no control over the process. Management does. So focusing on process improvement is a big deal. Perfect example. This morning I'm at the Y. I did my swim, my early morning swim. And all of a sudden about 30 kids come into the pool, teenagers, right? And they put on the weight belts and they're in the big half. They weren't swimming laps. And I was getting out and I said to the lifeguard, I said, oh, that's unusual. I've never seen that before. And she said, yeah, it's a such and such track team or something. And when they have the week they have a meet, they come and they swim, right? And I said, well, it's a fabulous idea. That's a great idea. That's really good for them. I think it must have been track or cross country or something. And I said, yeah, it's no impact, right? You know, give those legs a rest, give your body a rest. And I said, but they're still being active, right? I walk into the locker room and I about fell over because it looked like a bomb went off. Holy cow, there was just stuff strewn everywhere. Piles of stuff here, backpacks, clothes, books, shoes. Kind of reminded me of when my kids were teenagers and you walked into their bedroom. So take that times, you know, how many kids in a locker room. So when I came out, I said to the gal at the desk, I said, you know, you might make note to whoever is in charge of all this that the kids need to not throw their stuff everywhere. For one thing, the floor gets kind of wet. There was a lot of stuff to trip over. We have a ton of senior citizens through there, you know, and blah, blah. And she goes, well, the coaches are right over here. And I said, oh, great. She goes, do you want me to go talk to them? I said, no, I'll go talk to them. So I just walk over and I go, hi, hey, are you guys the coaches for the whatever? Yeah, we are. Well, you know what? You might want to talk to the kids and have them pick their stuff up. And I just briefly explain it. And they go, oh, you're kidding. Well, and right away, one of them said, wow, that could be a safety issue because we don't want anybody to trip. And I said, well, yeah. And I said, early morning like this, not a lot of the seniors are in here yet, but they'll be coming in for their 8 o'clock class because I was already leaving. It was already like 6:30 in the morning, 7 o'clock at the latest. And they said, oh, and I said, well, part of the problem, I said, is not their fault. It's a process issue. And I said this to them. And I said, and I just talked to them at the front desk. I said, the tops of the lockers are so dirty, you can't put your gym bag up there. I said, my gym bag doesn't even fit in the locker. And the one coach says, oh, so I suppose their gym bags don't fit in the locker. I said, no, they don't. Mine doesn't. And I have a smaller gym bag. Believe me, I don't have a ginormous backpack like the kids have. And I said, but if you put your bag up on top, when you pull it off, I said, you're just covered with dust bunnies all over. So I said, I did talk to them and I said, and there's a gal in there right now cleaning them. I said, because they've been kind of lax on this and I've mentioned it before. So rather than me hollering at coaches, hollering at students, hollering at the front desk or any of that, it's like, well, let's all get on the board on this. They're going to talk to the kids and say, listen, you need to put all your stuff in your backpack, get as much in your locker, and then put your bags up on top. And in the meantime, we will fix it on the Y side, right, by cleaning the top of that so that we can use that space effectively. Problem solving, people. Doesn't have to be an argument. Now, part of this was prompted by a lady who was in there and she was mad. She couldn't get to her normal locker. We don't have our own lockers, but people have their space, right? So she was really upset about it. And I said, well, I'm going to talk to him on the way out. And she said, well, good. So I don't know if she ever did either. Now, making the customer feel special. Got to make your customer feel special. You can read about this. Remembering names is the biggest tip I can give you. I'm horrible at it. I'm better than I ever used to be. And I always say I'm really horrible at it, but I'm probably better than a lot of people. But don't be embarrassed if you don't. You just have to reach out your hand and say, you know what? I'm sure you don't remember my name. It's Roxanne. And, you know, it's terrible, but I don't remember your name. But I do remember you were in last week and you were looking at this or that. Or I've talked to you on the phone before, haven't I? What's your name again? People are totally okay with that. Don't try to flub your way through it because we all know you don't know our name. And then being culturally aware, we've talked a lot about this already, and we're going to have another chapter on that, so you can read through that on your own. Read the customer service tip page on 222. And then the seventh thing is, you know your products and your service. You need to be the expert. If you don't know, find out someone who does, because there's nothing worse than when someone starts to just, well, you know, probably, maybe. This is exactly what I say to people out in the field. I'll say, okay, hang on a minute. You said maybe, could be, might. Those are all words that indicate to me that you don't know. So let's just skip all this part and why don't we go find the right person? Because guess what? I don't have, you know, I'm not going to say this person. I don't have a lot of time. I don't want to fuck around with this, right? But I can politely say, well, just hang on. It just sounds like you're not quite sure. Maybe you're new to the job. And then they usually say, yeah, I am, and I'm not quite sure. You know, well, let's go find the right person, right? Because I don't want to be dragged all over the store talking to the wrong person. Now we move on to page 224 with 6-5, which is dealing with perceptions. And remember, you've been hearing me say perception is reality. Well, perception ties into this business with stereotypes, right? And we've been talking about this already. So figure 6.4 on page 225 gives us a list of some of these factors that affect our perceptions. Your personal appearance, physical qualities, social roles, social behaviors, psychological qualities, group affiliations. I will give you a really good example for from the HR perspective. When you fill out an application for a job, they can't ask you for your address. It is illegal to ask you for your address because guess what? If I know what your address is and I'm familiar with the area, I can peg you on what neighborhood you come from. We can ask you, do you have a place that we can send or correspond with you? Do you have, what's your best way to get a hold of you? We can ask all kinds of other questions, but we are not allowed to ask those things. It's just like we can't ask if you're married. There's no relevance to the job for that, right? Because it starts, when you walk in a room, what's the first thing you notice about a human being? Think about it for a second. What's the first thing that your brain notices as a human being? Okay. Da, 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 da. It's gender. That's the first thing the brain registers, gender. Because then we categorize, right? We go to the category female, category male. What is our perception of the average female? What is our perception of the average male? And if anybody falls outside that little box, that starts changing our perceptions, right? Or something doesn't fit right, right? So we have to be mindful of this and not let it taint us when it comes to waiting on our customers. Let's see. Going forward, they talk more about disparage treatment. That's a legal term, by the way. If you disparage someone's character and it affects their ability to get a job or get a promotion, it's illegal, right? And it's federally regulated. So a lot of these things have legal repercussions as well. But for us, it's just about customer service being done professionally. And with that in mind, we have to try to bury all those stereotypes and those things that get in our way, right? Those things we learned from when we were little kids. That's why I tell people to travel. Travel, 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 travel. Get outside your comfort zone, because you'll find that the more you travel and learn about other people, the more you find out they're really a lot like us. They have the same worries. They worry about their kids being successful. They worry about their grandchildren if they have grandchildren. They worry about having enough money to feed their families. They all have the same concerns. We just express them in a different way, right? All right, you guys, that wraps up chapter 6. We'll see you back at chapter, maybe we're moving on to 7. I'll better look at my next agenda. Have a good day.